My name is William, and for most of my life, I've lived inside the machine. Where other people see a meaningless jumble of text on a screen, a wall of numbers, brackets, and strange symbols, I see a city. I see doors, alleyways, hidden passages, and vulnerabilities. I work in cybersecurity. It's my job to find the truth buried in the code. I just never, ever thought I'd have to use those skills to find the truth buried in my own marriage. My wife, Jessica, she built a secret world behind a wall of lies. She just forgot that I'm the man who tears down walls for a living. The story you're about to hear is about betrayal on a scale I couldn't have imagined, and a revenge that was just as methodical. It's about how the people we trust the most can be the greatest threat. If you've ever felt underestimated or disrespected, you're going to want to hear this. So settle in, hit that like button, and subscribe if you haven't already, because you won't believe how this ends. 9 years. We were 3 months shy of our 9th wedding anniversary. 9 years is a long time. It's long enough to build a life, a home, a language that only 2 people speak. It's long enough for comfort to settle in your bones, for trust to become as natural and necessary as breathing. Our friends called us the Rock. William and Jessica. The dependable ones. The ones who proved it could still work. From the outside, they were right. We had the house in the suburbs with the slate gray trim and the garden I could never quite keep alive. We had the 2 cars in the driveway and the curated photo albums on the coffee table, filled with smiling snapshots from trips to Italy, Thailand, and the coast of Maine. We had the kind of life that people aim for. Stable. Secure. Perfect. Jessica was the architect of that perfection. She worked in advertising, and she was brilliant at it. She could sell anything to anyone. It wasn't just a job for her, it was a part of her DNA. She could craft a narrative, spin a story with a smile so genuine you'd never think to question it. Her words were her tools, sharp, polished, and persuasive. When she spoke, people listened. When she pitched an idea, clients signed on the dotted line. She had this energy about her, a brightness that filled every room she entered. For years, I had been the primary audience for that light. I basked in it. I thought it was ours. But over the last year, the light started to dim. Or maybe it was just being redirected. It began subtly, as these things always do. It started with late nights at her office. Just a campaign launch, well, she'd say, her voice tired but buzzing with energy over the phone. The client is demanding a full rework. You know how it is. And I did. Her industry was a pressure cooker of deadlines and demanding personalities. So I'd make dinner for myself, eat it alone at our big dining room table, and leave a plate for her in the oven. When she'd finally come home, long after midnight, she'd give me a quick, distracted kiss that smelled of expensive perfume and the crisp night air. She'd look at her phone more than she'd look at me. The excuses started to pile up, each one plausible on its own, but together they formed a pattern, a dissonant chord in the symphony of our life. Client dinner. Networking event. Team building happy hour. The frequency increased, from once a month to once a week, then 2 or 3 times a week. The woman who used to text me throughout the day, sending silly pictures or complaining about her boss, was now a ghost. My messages would sit, delivered but unread, for hours at a time. When she was home, her phone was never far from her hand, always screen down, vibrating with notifications she would check with a furtive glance when she thought I wasn't looking. I tried to ignore it. I truly did. You don't throw away 9 years of history on a bad feeling. You tell yourself you're being paranoid, that you're letting the cynicism of your job seep into your personal life. My job is to be suspicious, to look for the anomaly in the data, the lie in the system. I told myself that's all this was. I was seeing a threat where there was only a tired wife working hard for our future. But the patterns were undeniable. The laughter. That was the thing that broke through my denial. I'd hear her on the phone in the other room, her voice light and musical in a way I hadn't heard in years. It was a full-throated, genuine laugh, the kind she used to share with me. Now, it was reserved for someone on the other end of the line. If I walked into the room, her expression would shudder instantly. The laughter would die in her throat, replaced by a polite, professional tone. "Oh, you talk soon," she'd murmur, hanging up before I could ask who it was. If I did ask, the answer was always the same. Just someone from work. The true breaking point, the moment the fragile shell of my denial shattered completely, came on a cold Tuesday night in November. She came home around 11 p.m., cheeks flushed from the cold. She was wearing a dark wool peacoat I'd never seen before. It was well-made, stylish, but it was also big on her. The shoulders were too broad, the sleeves too long. "New jacket?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. She shrugged it off, draping it over a chair. "Oh, this? It started raining when we left the restaurant. My colleague Mark let me borrow his. Super nice of him." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her eyes were darting around, avoiding mine. The name was new. Or maybe I just hadn't been paying attention. While she was in the shower, I walked over to the jacket. The faint scent of her perfume was there, but underneath it was something else. A man's cologne. Not mine. I reached into the pocket, my hand trembling slightly, feeling for a wallet, a receipt, anything. It was empty. But my fingers brushed against the label on the inside collar. It was a high-end menswear brand, one I knew was far too expensive for a casual loaner. It wasn't just a jacket. It was a statement. It was a piece of him in our house. I stood there in the quiet of our home, the sound of the shower running upstairs, and I felt the floor fall out from beneath me. The denial was gone, replaced by a cold, sickening certainty that churned in my stomach like acid. This was real. But I didn't confront her. An explosion of anger would be satisfying for a moment, but it would solve nothing. It would give her the chance to lie, to gaslight, to turn it all around on me. My professional instincts, honed over a decade of digital forensics, took over. When you find a breach, you don't just slam the door shut. You watch. You learn. You gather data. You find out exactly how deep the rot goes before you cut it out. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay next to her, feeling the warmth of her body, a body that felt alien to me now. I listened to her steady, peaceful breathing and felt a rage so pure and cold it scared me. She was sleeping the sound sleep of someone with no conscience, while my mind was a screaming chaos of betrayal. The next day, I went to work, but I wasn't tracking threats for my clients. I was planning an operation in my own home. It was disturbingly easy. I was the tech guy in our marriage. I had set up our entire home network, our cloud storage, our device backups. I had all the passwords, all the administrative access. She trusted me with her digital life completely, never suspecting that the man who protected her from outside threats would one day become the threat inside. I started with a simple network tap, rerouting all of her device traffic through a monitoring server I set up on a Raspberry Pi hidden behind our entertainment center. Then, I used my access to her cloud account to enable a full device mirror. It was a feature meant for seamless data transfer to a new phone, but it served my purpose perfectly. Within hours, her entire digital life was being streamed in real time to a secure laptop I kept in my home office. Her texts, her emails, her call logs, her photo galleries, her social media DMs, her location history. Everything. I locked my office door that night and sat down in front of the screen. I felt like a voyeur, a trespasser in a life I thought was half mine. My heart hammered against my ribs. Part of me wanted to close the laptop and pretend I'd seen nothing. But I had to know. I opened the messaging app. And there it was. A thread with a contact named Mark K. The sheer volume of messages was staggering. Hundreds a day. Thousands a week. It wasn't a new affair. The logs went back almost a year. A whole year of my life had been a lie. Reading those messages was like swallowing shards of glass. Each word was a fresh cut. They weren't just flirting. They were living a parallel life. They had pet names for each other. He called her Jessie Girl. She called him my lion. They complained about their spouses. She told him I was sweet but predictable. That I didn't challenge her. That our marriage felt safe but passionless. To him, she complained about the very stability I had worked so hard to provide for us. His wife's name was Sarah. He had 2 young kids. He sent Jessica pictures of them, complaining about how tired he was of family life, of playing the role of the suburban dad. He told Jessica she was his escape, his one true thing in a life of obligations. They sent photos, selfies from their client dinners at dimly lit, romantic restaurants, pictures from a hotel room during a work conference in another city, a trip I had encouraged her to take because she said she needed to de-stress. There was a video of them laughing in his car, her head thrown back in that same beautiful laugh that was now reserved only for him. Every late night, every business trip, every excuse was documented. It was all there, time-stamped and irrefutable. They were brazen, shameless. They talked about their future, about when they would finally leave their respective partners. They were planning a life together, built on the ashes of the ones they were living. The worst part was seeing the dates. A particularly loving thread of messages from him had come in on our anniversary, while she was sitting across the table from me at dinner, smiling and telling me how much she loved me, her phone buzzing in her lap under the table. She was replying to him while I was toasting to our future. I spent hours scrolling, my vision blurring with unshed tears of rage and humiliation. I felt like a fool. The Rock. The dependable one. I had been a convenience. A placeholder. A stable, predictable foundation upon which she could build her secret life of passion and excitement. I leaned back in my chair, the glow of the screen illuminating the silent, dark room. The house was quiet. Jessica was asleep down the hall, probably dreaming of him. I felt a profound emptiness, a void where 9 years of love and trust used to be. But underneath the pain, something else was beginning to stir. A cold, hard resolve. I didn't scream. I didn't break things. I didn't storm into our bedroom and throw her duplicity in her face. That would be her game. Emotional, messy, chaotic. My game was different. My world was one of logic, of systems, of cause and effect. She and Mark had built their world in the digital space, believing their secrets were safe behind passwords and lock screens. They felt clever, untouchable. They had made a critical error. They had built their house on my turf, and I was about to burn it to the ground. The idea started as a whisper in the back of my mind, a flicker of vengeance in the wreckage of my heart. It wasn't just about exposing the affair anymore. That was too simple. This wasn't just about a broken heart. It was about the profound disrespect, the calculated deceit, the sheer audacity of it all. They didn't just cheat. They rewrote our reality, casting me as the boring, oblivious husband. If she wanted to live in a scripted reality, I would become the director. If they thought their secrets were hidden, I would use the very technology they used to betray me to drag every single one of them into the blinding light. This wouldn't be a messy breakup. It would be a demolition. Precise. Calculated. Unavoidable. That night, lying awake in our bed, I stopped being a victim. I started planning. The days that followed were the strangest, most surreal period of my life. I was living in a state of suspended animation, a ghost in my own home. I had become two people. There was the public William, the loving husband who kissed Jessica goodbye in the morning, who asked about her day, who sat beside her on the couch watching movies, all while feeling like my skin was on fire. And then there was the real William, the one who would retreat to his office after she went to bed, the silent observer who watched her second life unfold on a screen. The pain was a physical presence. It was a constant, dull ache in my chest, a weight that made it hard to breathe. Food tasted like cardboard. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. When I did manage to drift off, I was haunted by nightmares woven from their text messages. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, the memory of their words, "My lion, Jessie girl," echoing in the darkness. I lost weight. Dark circles formed under my eyes. When Jessica asked if I was feeling okay, her voice laced with a hollow concern, I'd just blame it on stress at work. "Big project," I'd mumble. "Tight deadline." The irony was so thick I could choke on it. Living the lie was exhausting. We'd have dinner with our friends, the same friends who called us The Rock, and I'd have to sit there, smiling, as Jessica recounted some fabricated story about a demanding client to explain her recent absences. I would watch our friends nod in sympathy, telling her to take care of herself, and I felt a desperate urge to scream the truth. To stand up and say, "She's not at the office. She's with a married man named Mark. She's destroying 2 families, and you're all sitting here buying her performance. But I held my tongue. The performance had to continue. An early reveal would ruin everything. My surveillance became an obsession, a ritual. Every night, I'd pore over the data logs. I wasn't just looking for more evidence of the affair, I was studying them. I learned Mark's habits, his routines, his weaknesses. I tracked their movements through their phone's location data. I knew which restaurants they frequented, which park they met at for clandestine lunches, which hotel they favored for their after-work sessions. I felt like a detective and a stalker all at once, my morality eroding with every piece of information I gathered. There were close calls that made my blood run cold. One evening I was in my office, deep inside Mark's cloud drive. He used the same weak password for everything, a rookie mistake, when Jessica knocked on the door. "Well, you've been in there for hours. Everything okay?" My heart leaped into my throat. I frantically minimized the windows, my hands shaking. "Yeah, honey, just finishing up some code analysis. Be out in a bit. Can I come in? I wanted to ask you something." Panic seized me. My screen was a roadmap of their deception. "Just give me 5 minutes to wrap this up," I called out, my voice strained. "It's a delicate process." I heard her hesitate, then her footsteps retreated down the hall. I leaned back in my chair, breathing heavily. That was too close. I needed to be more careful. I invested in better encryption for my own files and started using a virtual machine for my research, a digital clean room that could be wiped in an instant. The more I dug into Mark, the more my disgust grew. He wasn't just a cheating husband, he was a snake in every aspect of his life. At their advertising firm, he was a master of corporate politics. I gained access to his work emails and documents through a simple phishing email I sent him, disguised as a password reset notification from IT. It was amateur hour stuff, but he fell for it hook, line, and sinker. Inside his files, I found a goldmine. He was taking credit for the work of his junior colleagues, subtly altering presentations to put his name on their ideas. He was expensing his romantic dinners with Jessica as client meetings. He was even fudging performance metrics on the campaigns. He managed to make himself look better for his upcoming performance review. He was a fraud through and through. Jessica hadn't just fallen for another man, she'd fallen for a cheap con artist who mirrored her own capacity for deceit. They deserved each other. And they deserved what was coming to them. For a while, I wrestled with what to do. The simplest path was to just end it. Confront Jessica with the evidence, file for divorce, and walk away. Or maybe send an anonymous package to Mark's wife, Sarah. I even drafted the email to her one night, my finger hovering over the send button. The package was full of screenshots, location logs, hotel receipts. It would be enough to blow their world apart. But I stopped. Because it felt incomplete. It was their secret, and just telling one other person didn't feel like justice. It felt like passing the buck, letting Sarah deal with the fallout while I just nursed my own wounds. And what would happen to Jessica and Mark? They'd be exposed, yes, but they would control the narrative. They would spin it as a tragic mistake, a moment of weakness. They would become the victims in their own story, painting me and Sarah as the scorned, hysterical spouses. No, that wasn't enough. The real injustice wasn't just the cheating. It was the arrogance. The utter confidence they had that they would never be caught. I read their messages planning a future getaway to a boutique hotel in the mountains for her birthday, a trip she had already told me she was taking with her girlfriends from work. They talked about it with such excitement, a secret celebration of their love, funded by his fraudulent expense reports and my own income. They were laughing at us. At me, at his wife, at his children. That's when my resolve hardened from a desire for release into a need for righteous, undeniable justice. They didn't deserve a quiet exit. They had built a public facade of success and happiness on a foundation of private lies. I decided their downfall had to be just as public as their success. I wouldn't just expose their affair. I would dismantle their entire constructed reality, brick by brick, in front of everyone they knew. The turning point, the moment the nebulous cloud of anger in my mind coalesced into a sharp, crystal-clear plan, came when I uncovered the details of the upcoming Aegis Advertising Awards Gala. It was the biggest night of the year for their firm. A huge, black-tie event celebrating the company's best campaigns. And according to an email I found from their boss, Jessica and Mark were slated to receive the top prize, the prestigious Vanguard Award, for a massive campaign they had co-led. The email praised their unparalleled synergy and seamless collaboration. They were going to be the stars of the show, celebrated on stage in front of their entire company, their clients, and their colleagues. This was it. This was the stage. Their greatest triumph would be the setting for their ultimate humiliation. The mountain getaway they were planning? It was for the weekend right after the gala. A victory lap. A celebration of their shared success, both professional and personal. They felt invincible. I sat in my dark office, the gala invitation gleaming on my monitor. The date was set. I had exactly 1 month. 1 month to gather every piece of ammunition, to build the digital weapon that would tear their world apart. 1 month to play the part of the supportive, oblivious husband while plotting the most significant breach of my career. The target wasn't a corporation or a foreign government. It was my own wife and her lover. And the payload wasn't malware, it was the unvarnished, brutal truth. I looked at the growing folder on my desktop, the one I had labeled simply Project Requiem. It contained everything. The texts, the photos, the hotel receipts, the evidence of Mark's professional fraud, his falsified expense reports. It was a perfect, self-contained narrative of their betrayal. The plan began to form, intricate and multi-layered. It wouldn't be a single explosion. It would be a series of controlled demolitions, timed to perfection, designed to strip them of everything they valued: their careers, their reputations, their carefully crafted lies. And I would be there, in the audience, watching the fallout. The silent observer, finally stepping out of the shadows. The month leading up to the Aegis Gala was a masterclass in compartmentalization. By day, I was William, the cybersecurity consultant, the quiet but dependable husband. I helped Jessica choose a dress for the event, a stunning emerald green gown. I listened as she practiced her acceptance speech, her voice filled with a confident pride that made me sick to my stomach. "We really knocked it out of the park with this one," she'd say, referring to her and Mark. I would smile, nod, and tell her, "You deserve it. You've worked so hard." Every supportive word I uttered was a lie, a carefully placed stone on the path to her ruin. But by night, my home office transformed into a war room. The grief that had hollowed me out for weeks was gone, replaced by a cold, electrifying focus. The pain was still there, a low hum beneath the surface, but now it was fuel. I was no longer the victim of their story, I was the architect of its ending. My plan had 3 distinct vectors of attack, a digital trident aimed at the heart of their world. Phase 1, professional assassination. Phase 2, social annihilation. Phase 3, personal reckoning. Each phase had to be executed flawlessly and simultaneously for maximum impact. For Phase 1, I focused on Mark. He was the weakest link, arrogant and sloppy. Using the access I had to his work accounts, I compiled an airtight dossier of his corporate malfeasance. It was more than just taking credit for others' work. I found evidence that he had lied about the ROI on a previous campaign to cover up a major loss, a fireable offense on its own. He had buried the real numbers so deep it would have taken a forensic accountant weeks to find them. It took me 2 nights. I packaged this information, complete with annotated evidence and a clear, concise summary, into a professional-looking PDF. I then set up a secure, anonymous email address through a series of encrypted relays, something untraceable. The email, addressed to the entire board of directors and the head of HR at their company, was scheduled to be sent at exactly 8:15 p.m. on the night of the gala, 15 minutes before their award was scheduled to be presented. The subject line was simple: an urgent matter regarding Vanguard Award recipient, Mark Keller. Phase 2 was more delicate. This was about destroying the social standing they had so carefully cultivated. This was for our friends, our families, the people they had lied to for over a year. I created a private, password-protected website. It was designed to look clean, elegant, almost like a memorial. The homepage had a single, beautiful photo of Jessica and me from our wedding day. Below it, a single sentence, the story of a 9-year marriage. But when you entered the password, which I would send out, the site opened up into a devastating timeline. It started with our wedding and moved chronologically through our life together, using photos from our own social media. But beginning a year ago, the timeline split. On the left side was our life. Pictures of us at family gatherings, on vacation, celebrating my birthday. On the right side was their life. Using the photos from Jessica's mirrored phone, I juxtaposed our reality with theirs. Here was a photo of me and Jessica at Christmas with my family. And right next to it, a screenshot of her text to Mark from that same day, saying she couldn't wait to get away from the in-law ordeal and be with him. Here was a picture of me giving her a gift for our anniversary. Next to it, a selfie she sent him from our bathroom that same night, wearing the necklace he had secretly given her, with the caption, "Thinking of you." It was a brutal, undeniable tapestry of her deceit, woven from her own words and pictures. The final piece of the social attack was a short, compiled video. I took dozens of the short clips they'd sent each other, laughing in his car, clinking glasses at a bar, walking in the park, and set them to the song from our first dance at our wedding. The emotional cruelty of it was precise. This package was set to be delivered via a mass text from a spoof number to a curated list of contacts. All of our mutual friends, her parents, my parents, her siblings, even her boss. The text would simply say, "The truth about William and Jessica," followed by the link and the password. This was scheduled to go live at 8:25 p.m., just as the confusion from the corporate email began to ripple through the gala. Phase 3 was the most personal, and the one I agonized over the most. It was for Mark's wife, Sarah. I didn't want her to find out in a public, humiliating way. She was an innocent casualty in all of this, and so were her children. She deserved the truth, but she also deserved the tools to protect herself. For her, I prepared a different kind of package. I compiled all the evidence of the affair, but I also included all the evidence of Mark's financial deceptions. I found proof that he had been siphoning money from their joint account into a private one, his escape fund. I included contact information for the best divorce lawyer in the city and a highly recommended forensic accountant. I wrote her a letter, anonymous and to the point, explaining that she was married to a liar and a thief, and that she needed to act quickly to secure her and her children's future. I printed everything, put it in a sealed envelope, and paid a courier to deliver it to her home address at 6 p.m. on the night of the gala, giving her time to process it before the public explosion. I didn't want her to be blindsided. I wanted her to be prepared. The final 2 weeks were a blur of technical execution. I set up the servers, coded the website, wrote the scripts for the scheduled deliveries, and tested everything a dozen times. I routed my actions through servers in 3 different countries. By the time I was done, my digital footprint was completely gone. The attacks would look like they came from everywhere and nowhere all at once. The night before the gala, I sat in my office, the execute commands for all 3 phases glowing on my screen. Everything was automated. I didn't have to do anything tomorrow but sit and watch. I looked around the room at the life I had built. Photos of Jessica and me were on the bookshelf. Her laugh seemed to echo in the quiet house. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of doubt. Was this too much? Was the destruction I was about to unleash too monstrous? Then my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the monitoring software. A new message from Jessica to Mark. I clicked it open. "Can't wait for tomorrow," she wrote. "Our night. To finally be seen for the team we are. Then our weekend. Just you and me, like. Finally." His reply came a moment later. "It's our real beginning, Jessie girl. The end of the old life. I love you." And just like that, the doubt vanished, replaced by a glacial calm. They weren't just cheating. They were celebrating the death of their old lives while still living them. They were dancing on the graves of their marriages. My hesitation evaporated. They had written the script. I was just setting the stage for the final act. I closed the laptop. I walked through the house, a museum of our shared history. I paused at our wedding photo in the hallway. We looked so young, so full of a future that I now knew was a fantasy. I felt a deep, profound sadness for the man in that picture. He had no idea what was coming. I took the photo off the wall, carried it to my office, and placed it face down on my desk. That man was gone. In his place stood someone else. Someone colder, harder, and infinitely more patient. Tomorrow night, Jessica would finally meet him. The day of the gala arrived with an unnerving, cinematic stillness. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue, a stark contrast to the storm I was about to unleash. I went through the motions with a detached sense of calm. I put on my tuxedo, tying the bow tie with steady hands as I watched my own reflection in the mirror. My eyes looked different, older, harder. The hollowed-out look of grief had been replaced by the sharp glint of purpose. Jessica was a whirlwind of excited energy. She looked breathtaking in her emerald gown. As she fastened a diamond necklace, a gift from me from a lifetime ago, she caught my eye in the mirror. "You're quiet tonight," she said, her voice soft. "Are you sure you're okay?" I forced a smile. "Just a lot on my mind. But tonight is about you. I'm so incredibly proud of you." The words felt like ash in my mouth, but they were the perfect final touches to my performance. She smiled, a brilliant, radiant smile that, for the first time, had no effect on me. It was like looking at a photograph of a stranger. On the drive to the hotel ballroom, she held my hand, talking animatedly about who would be there, what this award meant for her career, for their team. The team. She squeezed my hand. "Thank you for being so supportive through all the late nights. I know it's been a lot." "It was worth it to see you succeed," I said, my voice perfectly even. The car was filled with her perfume. The same perfume that had clung to the borrowed peacoat. We arrived at the gala. It was exactly as opulent and self-congratulatory as I'd imagined. Crystal chandeliers, champagne flowing, the low hum of 100 conversations filling the cavernous ballroom. I played the part of the dutiful husband, smiling and shaking hands with her colleagues, people who had no idea that their well-ordered corporate world was about to be turned upside down. I saw him across the room. Mark Keller. He was taller than I'd pictured, with a smug, easy confidence that set my teeth on edge. He was standing with a group of people, holding a glass of scotch, laughing loudly. He looked like a king in his court. He and Jessica shared a look across the room, a quick, electric glance filled with shared secrets and anticipation. It was so brazen, so obvious. They thought they were invisible. I found our table and settled in for the show. I checked my watch. 6:15 p.m. The courier had just delivered the package to Sarah Keller. Phase 3 was in motion. I imagined her opening it, the confusion turning to dawning horror. I felt a pang of sympathy for her, but I had given her a head start. The rest was up to her. The next 2 hours crawled by. Dinner was served, speeches were made. I ate without tasting, my entire being focused on the clock. My phone was on the table, face up. Silent. Waiting. At 8:14 p.m., my heart began to pound. A low, heavy drumbeat in my ears. I took a slow sip of water. Any second now. At 8:15 p.m. a phone buzzed at the head table, where the company's CEO and board members were seated. Then another. And another. A confused murmur rippled through the front of the room. The CEO, a man with a stern, imposing face, looked down at his phone, his brow furrowing. He swiped the screen, read for a moment, and his face went pale. He looked up, his eyes immediately scanning the room until they landed on Mark. It was a look of pure fury. Phase 1, professional assassination, was a success. Mark and Jessica, sitting at a nearby table of honor, were oblivious. They were whispering to each other, laughing, basking in the glow of their impending victory. The event's host walked up to the podium. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for. The Vanguard Award, for innovation and unparalleled results, goes to the team behind the Apex campaign. Jessica Miller and Mark Keller. A polite round of applause started. As they stood up, beaming, my phone on the table lit up with a delivery confirmation. 8:25 p.m. The text messages containing the link to my website, Project Requiem, had just been sent. It began almost immediately. A phone chimed at our table. It was one of our friends, a woman named Chloe. She glanced down, a puzzled look on her face. Then her eyes went wide. She looked from her phone to Jessica, who was walking toward the stage, and then to me. Her mouth was slightly agape. Then another phone at the table went off. And another. A wave of digital noise swept through the ballroom. The polite applause faltered as dozens, then hundreds of people looked down at their screens. The low hum of conversation died, replaced by a tense, electric silence broken only by the sound of notification chimes. It was a symphony of destruction. My symphony. On stage, Jessica and Mark had just reached the podium, their smiles frozen on their faces. They could feel the shift in the room. They looked out at the sea of faces, no longer looking up at them with admiration, but down at their glowing screens with expressions of shock and disgust. Jessica's boss, who was supposed to present the award, was staring at his phone, his face a mask of disbelief. He looked up at her, not with pride, but with contempt. I saw Jessica's own purse, left on her chair, begin to vibrate uncontrollably. Her phone was being flooded with messages from her parents, her sister, her friends, all demanding to know what was going on. Mark's confident smirk was gone. He looked bewildered, his eyes darting around the room, trying to understand what was happening. Then I saw him see it. Someone near the front had their phone angled just right, and on the screen was the centerpiece of my website, the video compilation of their secret moments, set to their wedding song. Our wedding song. The color drained from his face. He looked at Jessica, his eyes wide with panic. She followed his gaze, finally understanding. The truth was not just out, it was everywhere. It was on every screen, in every hand in the room. She looked out at the audience, her eyes frantically searching, and then she found me. I was sitting at our table, perfectly still, watching her. I didn't smile. I didn't scowl. I just held her gaze, my expression unreadable, and I gave her the slightest, almost imperceptible nod. And in that moment she knew. She knew it was me. The predictable husband. The stable, boring man who couldn't possibly have known. Her face crumpled. The confident, brilliant advertising executive vanished, replaced by a look of pure, gut-wrenching horror. The CEO strode onto the stage, took the microphone, and his voice boomed through the silent room. There's been a development. We will be postponing the presentation of this award pending an internal investigation. Please, everyone, enjoy the rest of your evening. It was over. Jessica and Mark stood there, marooned on the stage under the hot lights, as the audience began to whisper. They were no longer stars, they were a spectacle. A train wreck. After a moment of stunned paralysis, they practically fled the stage, pushing their way through a crowd that parted for them as if they were carrying a plague. I stood up, adjusted my tuxedo, and walked out of the ballroom. I didn't look back. I took a cab home. She stumbled through the door an hour later. Her makeup was ruined by tears, the beautiful emerald dress looking like a costume from another life. She saw me standing in the living room, waiting for her. The wedding photo I had taken down was on the coffee table, screen side up. "Will," she whispered, her voice cracking. How could you?" I felt nothing. The rage, the pain, the love, it had all been burned away, leaving only a cold, quiet emptiness. "How could I?" I replied, my voice dangerously soft. "You built a world of lies, Jessica. You and him. You built it on my trust, on our life, on the back of his family. You built it with technology, with messages and photos and secrets you thought no one would ever see. You just forgot one thing." She stared at me, tears streaming down her face. "What?" "You built it in my world," I said. "And in my world, the truth always gets out. Nothing stays hidden forever." The fallout was absolute. Jessica was fired the next morning. Mark was fired and facing a lawsuit from the company for fraud. His wife, Sarah, armed with the information I had given her, had frozen their joint assets and filed for divorce before he even got home from the gala. Our friends, our families, they were all silent. There was nothing to say. They had seen the proof. I filed for divorce the same day. She didn't contest it. She didn't ask for anything. She had nothing left to fight with. The last I heard, she had moved out of the city, trying to escape the digital ghost of the life she had destroyed. I sit in my house now, The same house that once felt like a prison of betrayal. It's quiet, but it's a clean quiet. A peaceful quiet. The revenge wasn't loud or explosive in the way she would have done it. It was silent, methodical, and total. I didn't ruin her life with a lie, I ruined it with her own truth. I simply opened the doors she had locked and let the light pour in. She thought she was playing a game. She just didn't realize I was the one who designed the board. There's no real celebration in a victory like this. There's no joy. There's just a quiet balancing of the scales. Justice. Vengeance doesn't heal the wound of betrayal, but it can cauterize it, stop the bleeding. It can give you back the narrative of your own life. For a year, she and Mark had been the authors of my reality, and I had been an unwitting character in their sordid drama. The revenge wasn't just about punishment, it was about taking back the pen. It was about writing the final chapter myself, on my own terms. They thought their affair was a secret, hidden away in the dark corners of the digital world. But I live in those dark corners. And I know that's where the truth is always waiting to be found. They built a wall of lies, and I did what I do best. I tore it down to the foundation. The digital world gives us incredible tools to connect, but it also gives people new ways to deceive. This was a story about how those same tools can be used to reclaim the truth. If you have a story about justice being served, I'd be interested to read it in the comments below. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. And remember, be careful what secrets you keep online. You never know who might be watching.